For more resources, visit rym.org.
One, two, 3.
The Local Youth Worker is a daily podcast that's centered on 5 questions each week. Ranging from the practical to the professional, we're looking for answers to the questions you're asking. Whether you're in full-time, part-time, or even volunteer youth ministry, this podcast is for you.
Hey everybody, welcome back to our Friday show. We've been talking to Lara all this week, and Lara, we've I guess got a little bit into some challenges yesterday, but as you were giving us some background on Redeemer Church and just all that the Lord is doing through that church, and you talking about your specific upbringing and how that's helped equip you to do ministry in that context. What have been some of the greatest challenges of ministering in your context at Redeemer?
Yeah, I would say, one of the greatest maybe it's not the greatest, but one of the challenges that I've sort of come up against would, in this context, would sometimes it can be a lonely place. And I think that's just ministry and youth ministry in general.
Yeah.
I don't think that's just this specifically at Redeemer. But just us, it can sometimes be a lonely place. And sometimes it can be a challenge, not necessarily a challenge, but it's kind of helping people understand. And going back to being patient, and being humble and walking with people and understanding kind of, all right, what we do at Redeemer. But I remember one time Ryan Dean, he said, I don't have anyone to talk to about, some of the stuff we deal with. And, sometimes it can feel that way. And even like with resources where I'm like, all right, there aren't necessarily resource, as far as like curriculum, that I'm like, all right, how can I adapt or like change this to kind of fit just the students that we do have. And so those are some challenges. But then also there are great joys about ministering in our context.
So tell us about some of those. I'd love to hear some of the joys as well.
Yeah. It's been a joy to see, whether it's in small groups or just one-on-ones, or seeing friendships being built within the youth on a Wednesday night or Sunday night. I think for me, that's been one of the greatest joys, and it's been really sweet and beautiful to see teenagers. And, we've had a few examples of teenagers who do come from different backgrounds or, cultural contexts, who are racially different, and seeing them actually become friends who care about each other and who actually like truly love each other and are concerned for one another. If, someone on a missions trip falls, like they are concerned for them. And not sort of like this, oh, are you okay? But like, I will carry you all the way, the rest of the way. And so that's been really beautiful to see that in our ministry context at Redeemer, there are kids who they could probably say like, no, these are some of my greatest friends. And I know that from, I guess, the girls' side. And then just seeing even in small groups as we're having discussions, and sometimes race will come up, or sometimes just the different cultural differences will come up. And so just seeing, there's one particular example of just seeing a girl really sort of listen and try to understand where another girl was coming from, with just her hurt and her experience in her life. And so it's moments like that that just bring me so much joy, because it's God at work, and it's His Spirit at work in the hearts of these students. And, and also just seeing when they go to RYM, or when they are doing, on a missions trip, and just seeing the Word of God impact them in a way where they want to talk about it on the drive home, and they want to ask questions. And the fact that they're asking questions about the Bible, or asking questions about what one speaker said, that's God at work. And so, seeing Spirit at work.
Yeah, I mean, that just sounds beautiful. And I mean, you think of, for Christians, I mean, community and fellowship, I mean, that's such a big deal. And it's sweet when you see that happen in a church. But you think of, especially, with a multi-ethnic church, I mean, just how much more sweet that has to be, because we're so easily attracted to people who are like us. But then when you see that unity with those who don't look like us or don't talk like us, and just the sweetness there. So I know that's got to be just a deep joy, again, that you have a front row seat to at Redeemer.
Yeah.
And so you mentioned resources just a little while ago. And I know one of the struggles there, you were saying, is curriculum, and sometimes the application or illustrations, whatever, might not fit the context you're ministering in. But what have been some resources that you would recommend? Maybe a book that's been helpful, maybe some articles, or anything that might be helpful that's helped you and might help others.
Yeah. So I'll just say, I mean, the Gospel Coalition always, I can't point to a specific article on there, but they always come out with good stuff when it comes to diversity and multi-ethnic churches and ministry. And so that has been a great resource that I often go to. It's just the Gospel Coalition, and I just sort of scroll and kind of see what someone has put on there as far as an article. I really love movies, and so I spend a lot of time watching movies in my free time. And so I guess the earlier years in ministry, a movie that really impacted and was helpful for me was Freedom Writers. And I haven't seen that movie in a long time, but it's one of my favorite movies because I think it's a movie that you see all the types of things that do divide us, and you see that in that movie, whether in that movie it's gang related or racially or whatever it is, even neighborhoods. But then what you see that happens within that classroom is you see in the midst of you see the division sort of not fade away, but kind of crumble as unity is starting to make its way in this classroom. And you see the compassion of this teacher, and she goes in not knowing and not understanding where a lot of these kids are coming from. And I think she says at one point, help me understand. And I think that's just such in a lot of ways, a humbling, because there are things where I'm like, no, help, I need to say that, help me understand. I need to be reminded to no, help me understand. Because there are times when I don't understand where a kid is coming from or why they're upset about something. And so, that movie, also a classic, Remember the Titans. That's just a great movie. But that's sort of my earlier years. That's just been really helpful for me. And just that's an awesome movie. And then also just the resources as people being a resource for me. Ryan Dean has been such a great like person to bounce ideas off of. And so just the resources he has, the experience, and just other people at Redeemer who have been an encouragement and have who are so wise when it comes to just what we do at Redeemer. And so that's been really helpful to learn from men and women who have a heart for this. And but then also a book that I just finished and that I would recommend would be The Hate U Give. It's not a ministry book, but I'm just going to put that out there because Angie Thomas, she's a Jackson native, went to Belhaven, and it's a powerful book, and that has really helped me too, as the main character is dealing with living in between two different worlds. I will say there is language throughout the book, so I will caution readers that there is language. So
yeah, now that's a lot of good, and I'm glad you're pointing out too just how people are resources. Because definitely, just you on this podcast is a resource for us, and so we appreciate you taking the time out and doing that, and also just highlighting movies. As I was sharing with you just, in between, John Perkins in one of his book just talks about the importance of watching movies that are, depicting different cultures. And, we might think, oh, well, that's just a movie. But no, movies, typically do have a message and they're very powerful. And so pointing to movies as a resource can be helpful for sure. Lara, I've enjoyed getting to talk with you. And again, you have served us well by being a resource, and appreciate you sharing a lot about your family, sharing about your ministry context, and just taking time out to talk with us. So anything else to say as we close out?
No, I thank you for having me on here. I've enjoyed it. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Oh, come and buy without money. Oh, come and feast without pay. For the King has opened his banquet hall to the beggar, the outcast, and the slave. For the King has opened his banquet hall to the beggar, the outcast, and the slave.